Well, the referendum is going to take place tomorrow. It's going to be very, very close, I think. My personal hope is that we will vote to remain in the European Union. If we don't, I think there will be an immediate shock to the economy in Britain and to sterling currency. I think there will be a spillover actually through world markets. I don't think it will be good for the European Union either. I think that this is actually a very unnecessary risk. A referendum is a very blunt instrument with which to deal with a subject which is very complex, has lots of nuances. It should not be decided in a yes or no vote, and it shouldn't really be decided by slogans which in the end are much too simplistic. Take back control, secure our borders, things like that. It's not sensible. Okay. However, there was a political imperative for David Cameron to call the referendum. The point is that the populist UKIP, United Kingdom Independence Party, more or less forced him to do it because they were taking more and more votes from the Conservatives. His own party is deeply divided over Britain's membership of the European Union, and I think probably a majority of Conservatives in the country are Eurosceptic, and most of the Eurosceptics, not all of them, but most of them would actually vote to leave. So it's going to be, I think, a pretty close-run thing. It's been sort of described as Project Fear against Project Hope. Well, the Project Fear, I think, is realistic. And why do something that you're afraid of? I mean, try to avoid it. Project Hope is something which actually is a leap into the unknown. The Leave campaign, which itself is actually divided, really has no vision, particularly, of how Britain would be outside the European Union. They don't know. So it really is a leap into the unknown if we vote to leave. I sincerely hope that we won't, and we will know in the early hours of Friday morning.
Okay, and there are various scenarios about how Brexit, or even the Bremain, could affect the Greek case. What is your opinion?
Well, I think it's interesting. We've gone from Grexit to Brexit in terms of political folklore. I don't think it will affect Greece in the short term, but I think it will affect the whole of the European Union in the short to medium term, because first of all, the reaction of the other 27 member states will be not to make it easy for Britain, because if they make it easy, it will encourage so many populist forces, the National Front National in France, the Podemos perhaps in Spain, alternatives for Deutschland in Germany, to want to leave the European Union. Now, there will doubtless be a lot of Greeks who would like to leave the European Union in that case. So I think the reaction of the other governments will be to play hardball in the short term. Medium term, though, there are fundamental problems in the European Union, and they won't go away. And you have a tension now between those who think that the survival of the Eurozone rests upon having a much deeper, more federal Europe, and those who think if you go that route, then you are actually going to arouse more and more anti-EU sentiment. Because in a sense, it's a problem of globalization. You've got lots of voters feeling that they have been left behind by globalization, and the governments have not been able to find a solution to their fears.
And one more question. In your opinion, what is the main reason behind the fact that for the first time the British society is considering the prospect of Brexit so seriously?
I think one problem is that we've always had a different view of the European Union. I mean, if you're on the continent of Europe, you see the EU as a pillar against war, as a defense against war. Remember, it started with 6 countries, and it was essentially to make sure that there was never again war between France and Germany. And then you expand the European Union to include countries which were dictatorships or under fascism. So Spain, Portugal, Greece under the colonels and so on. And then you expand it still more to take countries which were under communist control, Eastern Europe, Central and Eastern Europe. Britain has never experienced that. And so we have always in our hearts, wrongly in my opinion, but nonetheless it's a fact, we've always considered it really a free trade organization, an economic unit. And so we've always been mistrustful of the political project of the European Union.
Thank you, John.
You're very welcome.